Paul's guilt-induced hallucination must have been extremely powerful because it changed the mind of a vicious persecutor into a faithful martyr. I dare say that no comparable conversions have ever been recorded among notorious murdering fanatics in history.
I'll give you 3.
Each one of those teardrops stands for a confirmed kill. I stopped adding after 26. One time, my wife and I went to a DSW, and I saw in the distance these 2 women in black burqas in my store. I cried as I prayed for enough strength to go over there and break both their necks. I had devised a plan, create my own IED, homemade bomb, and I was gonna set it off right outside the Muncie Islamic Center. 200 plus killed or injured. That was the plan. I knew I would end up in a federal prison with a needle in my arm. I didn't care. My hatred of Islam. It was the only thing that was keeping me alive. So one day my daughter comes home, 2nd grade maybe. She was telling me about this little boy who sat across from her. His mom came to get him. She said she had scarves on her and she had a dress all the way down to her feet and you couldn't see her on nothing but her eyeballs. At that point I snapped, started spewing things out of my mouth that should never be said. And I remember my daughter looking at me like I was absolutely the craziest person on the face of the earth. I decided to give the people of this community one more chance. So I went to the Islamic Center, see a gentleman in the shoe room taking off his shoes. He looks at me and he smiles. He said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I want you to teach me about Islam." So he went and he gave me a Quran. "Read this, come back when you have questions." So I did. And I would see things in the book. I'd be like, "There it is, I got him right there. Explain that to me." And they would. This was a kind of awakening. Long story short, 8 weeks after that first day I stepped into the Islamic Center, I became a Muslim. I had learned that I was completely wrong about everything that I felt. You know, Judaism had a message, Christianity had a message, Islam had a message. Funny thing is, though, it was the same message. It was about peace, and it was about love.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. McKinney.
My big thing is now to stop the hate. Nothing good has ever come out of hatred.
If you look back in the history of Islam and the people who played a great role in spreading Islam, the one prominent name comes in your mind will be of Umar radiallahu anh. Before accepting Islam, Umar radiallahu anh was one of the most extreme enemies of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He opposed Islam and threatened to kill the Prophet often. One day, he decided to kill the Holy Prophet. When he was on his way to execute his plan, he came to know about his sister and brother-in-law embracing Islam. He went to his sister's house where she and his brother-in-law were being taught Quran by Khabbab radiallahu anhu. He inquired about their acceptance of Islam and started fighting with them. He slapped his sister in a way that she started bleeding. When he saw his sister bleeding, he calmed down out of guilt. He then asked his sister to show the pages of Quran. He was greatly moved by the holy verses and approved them as the words of Allah. In the early days, Muslims were not able to offer salat publicly due to fear of chiefs of Quraysh. But when Umar radiallahu anhu accepted Islam, believers came out openly as they knew no one had dared to face Umar radiallahu anhu. After the death of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu took the responsibility and became the second caliph. He followed the footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to the full extent. It was Umar under whose rule Islam became an international power. The mighty empires of Persia and Byzantine collapsed before the army of Islam. Within 10 years of his glorious rule, the whole of the Persian Empire, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and a part of Turkey came under the banner of Islam.
And in this day and age, we really like this response because we believe that experience trumps all. You know, you can't argue with a person's experience. And so we'll say something like, well, I tried it and it changed my life. Good for you. That's awesome. You tried it and it changed your life. Because you're the only person who's ever tried anything and it's changed their life, right? And maybe he'll tell you a story. He'll tell you a story about a guy who was from the United States. He was born and raised in the Midwest, part of a large family. Mother had mental problems. Father was murdered when he was young. He ended up having to go to Boston to live with his oldest sister. But there when he was in Boston, he ran into a crowd that was quite unsavory. And having run into this crowd that was quite unsavory, he became quite unsavory. And before too long, he found himself in prison in Massachusetts. In prison in Massachusetts, there's some men who approached him about his need for his life to be changed. They approached him about this Messiah that he needed to meet and encounter and to whom he needed to bow the knee. But he couldn't. He simply could not until one night in his cell, he had a personal, vivid encounter with this Messiah. And he bowed the knee. His entire life changed. He became a model prisoner. Ended up getting out of prison early. Became one of the most famous preachers in the United States. There are streets named after him to this day. He was responsible personally for opening over 100 houses of worship. His name was Malcolm X. His Messiah, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That encounter in his cell in prison was fraudulent. And yet he based everything on it. He had an experience. It changed his life. And he was wrong.